Donald Matz. My birth date is 9/5/50, and I live in Warren, Minnesota.
Which war did you serve in?
Vietnam,
What branch of service?
Navy.
What was your rank?
I was a seaman second class.
Where did you serve?
I served, my final station was I served aboard the U.S.S. Thomas Jefferson, and we were in various ports.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted.
Where were you living at that time?
I was going to college at Mayville State College in North Dakota, Mayville, North Dakota.
What did your family think of you enlisting?
Well, my dad served in World War II. I guess they didn't really say too much about it. I think they were fine with it.
Where did you, what year did you go in?
1969.
Okay. Do you recall your first days in the service? Like, what was your boot camp experience like?
Probably like everybody else is kind of miserable,
Yeah.
you know. It just, you know, everything was controlled, and I guess nothing out of the ordinary, you know.
Yeah. Do you remember any particular training exercises that really stick out in your mind, or?
Well, we had to we went to classes every day, and you had this rifle, and you had to take that rifle wherever you went. So you go and file, you know, march over to the classroom, and then you'd file in, and you had to put your rifle in the rack, and then at the end of the class you went and got your rifle, made sure you got your own, and then probably went to another class or chow or whatever, you know. So
Okay. How long were you at basic training?
I think it was about 4 months. I don't really remember exactly.
Where was that?
In north of Chicago, Naval Training Station there.
Okay. So after basic training, where did you go?
Well, I stayed there for my first training. Was it's called BP&E school. It was for mechanic, boilermaker type. And then from there I went to San Diego, and I was on a tender for about four or 5 months, waiting for my opening for my school. My first school was in Napa, California. That was about 6 months. That was very intense education classes. We had math and sciences and everything. And then from there I went to Idaho Falls, Idaho. And where that school was out in the desert, I call it. We had to load up on buses and go out there, and nobody could drive out there because they were very secure. They were mock-ups of power plants, you know, for a submarine and an aircraft carrier. So, and that was about another 6 months. And I made it through there, and then I was on to Thomas Jefferson.
Did you know you were going to be on a submarine during your training? Like, did you know that's what you were working towards?
Only at the last school, because you were working with the mock-up of the submarine.
Okay. What did you think about that? Like, when you found out you were going to be on a submarine, what were your thoughts?
Well, I'd never been on a submarine, of course. Actually, I'd never been I never flew in an airplane until I went to boot camp. Left from Fargo to Chicago. So that was an experience right there. And So, yeah, so that's where I learned, and I don't know, it didn't really matter one way or another. I knew it was going to be on a ship, so they chose it for me. I didn't choose it. You know, they through their interviews and review of you, because you had to be pretty stable for that service.
Did they have to determine if you would be claustrophobic or anything like that?
No.
No. What ocean were you in the submarine? Like what body of water?
Well, so I was on Fleet ballistic missile sub. We had 16 missiles on board and torpedoes, and it was our mission to go out and hide, so no one knew where we were at. So if something happened where we were have to use our missiles, we wouldn't be detected before we got the missiles off. We'd probably be detected when we shot them off, but you know. So my first patrol was we went to Rota, Spain, picked up the sub over there. We spent a month in dry dock, just getting the sub prepared and getting orientation for ourselves. And then we went out in the Med for about 3 months, and didn't surface. You know, you just hid.
Wow. What were living conditions like on the submarine?
Well, it was close. You know, you have that boat is big, but you had it was about 140 men on board, officers and seamen.
What did you sleep on in the submarine?
Well, you had bunks. Some of the bunks were located in different places, like in the missile compartment they had bunks for those guys. Mine was up underneath the mess deck, and they were 3 high, and you had about that much between each one.
Oh.
And you had it's curtained, so you know you're all closed in except for the curtain in front. So yeah, everything was very close, very tight.
Do you remember what the food was like on board?
Well, that's one thing, we had really good food. We had steak and lobster almost every week, like on a Sunday. We had very fresh fruits and stuff until we ran out, like eggs, fresh eggs for so long that you'd run out of them. But the food was good. Yeah, mealtime was kind of the easy time. You weren't so stressed out. You know, they usually didn't run drills and stuff during mealtime, so that was nice.
What was your job on board?
I was the machinist mate. I worked in the engine room, running propulsion, turbines, and made fresh air, because it's self-sustaining. You make your own water and air. You know, there's scrubbers that clean the air, and the water it's a evaporation system. And then, yeah, so mainly it's propulsion. So.
Did you ever have to shoot the missiles off of the submarine?
We did a test firing off of the coast of Florida. That was after we did a refit in California. That was the only time. So it wasn't just a practice.
Were you ever involved in combat then?
No.
Or no? Okay.
Well, first month, I suppose, when we got on my first time, I would have these nightmares where I was working in the engine room, and the sub's got a round belly to it, so you have bilges where water collects, and you got all these pipes, steam pipes, and all that are in there. And you have to get under the decking. You walk on decking, flat decking. You have to get under there sometimes and clean or fix something, fix a valve or something.
Yeah.
And many times I would have this dream that I was under that decking and I couldn't get out. I couldn't get out, you know. And then I'd wake up and I realized there was a curtain here, so I'd open the curtain. You know, it's kind of, that was my only claustrophobic experience on the sub. I used to walk, the engine room was, of course, in the tail end of the boat. And I'd go to take my watch, walk back there, and sometimes it seemed like the lighting was just right, so it looked like there was sunshine back in the back of the boat. You know, that's just kind of weird, but you know, it just because you were constantly, you were basically 6 hours on, 6 hours off. You had 6 hours to study, 6 hours on watch, 6 hours for rest. So that's what our day was. So it was more like 2 days in one day. Seemed like. But, let's see.
How did you stay in touch with family back home if you were, you know, down in that submarine?
Yeah. Oh, each guy had 4 family grams, they call them. So you'd write out, it was only 15 words, so you could write out a family gram, and then so you could send 4 of those, and it was over the, you know, radio or telegraph or whatever they, you know, so.
And that was over how many months that you had 4?
3.
3 months. Okay.
Yeah, and then you could receive them too, but you didn't get it very often.
Tell me about like the pressure and stress on board.
Well, it was constant because of the, you know, standing watch and drills. We did drills all the time. That was real stressful. And you know, like fire drills and all whatever, you know. So that was hectic because you had to jump and go.
Yeah. So what would you have to do during those drills?
Well, a lot of times it was, well, for instance, you maybe have to fight a fire or just go and relieve somebody from a position. And, but, so.
How did people entertain themselves?
Well, we had movies, so in the evenings. So if you weren't on watch or studying, because we had to study too, because you had to learn the entire workings of the entire boat. You had to know what was in every compartment, what everything did, because if you were in a compartment and you had an emergency, you would have to be able to do something, you know, to deal with that emergency where you were at, because you weren't necessarily in the engine room. I could have been up in the torpedo room or someplace like that and have to respond.
So did you feel a lot of mental fatigue? I mean, all the studying and knowledge that you needed to learn?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was young, and you just kind of got used to it, I guess, to a point. The stress relief came when you came home, came into port.
How many times were you out in the submarine and then back to port and then out again? I mean, did you have leave at all while you were?
Well, our boat, we had 2 sections. I was in the gold section, and then there was the blue section. So when the gold section took over the boat, like I said, we flew over to Spain and picked up the boat. Then the blue crew went back to New London, Connecticut. That's where the base was, the original base we were out of. And then there they spent 3 months, and then they could take leave and they had classes and stuff to go to and things like that. And so that was, so let's see, I made a patrol in the Mediterranean. I made a patrol in the North Atlantic. I made a patrol through in the Bermuda area, through the Panama Canal, and up to San Diego. And then the next, then the boat went into refit in Napa.
And what is that?
Well, they go through the pumps and, you know, refurbish things. And we had our nuclear fuel rods replaced. So, yeah, so that was kind of nice, because that was more of a going to a job type thing. Then I lived off base, and so I just kind of go to work, you know, instead of that when you're on constantly. But even when you were that month before you went out, that was port and starboard duty. So you'd work all day and then have stand watch and stuff that night. And the next day you'd work all day, and then that night you had off. And you go to wherever. So Spain was interesting. They were pretty backward over there at that time.
So you got to spend some time in Spain? Well,
just in the local area.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember a trip a bunch of us took on a bus. We went up to one of the villages down the coast, and it was just like a old movie, you know, where they have you drive into town and it's got that stucco buildings, and they got writing on Viva, you know, and they had an open meat market, and it was, to our standards, it was pretty primitive, you know. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, were you able to travel anywhere else? Like, so you went to Spain. Did you go anywhere else? Any other countries while you were?
Well, when we went through the canal, I think there was like a dozen of us that had the opportunity to cross the canal on land, by land, instead of on the ship. So we took the train across. And that was very interesting. We went to the locks and saw how they operated. And, yeah.
Okay.
So that was. And no, not really, because it doesn't work that way with our sub. Now, a lot of the other ships, they would go to different ports, you know, and be able to get off and see, but that wasn't ours. We were hiding, always hiding.
So how many years were you
6.
in the Okay, 6. And were you in the submarine the whole time? I mean, involved with the submarine the whole time?
Well, basically, the first 2 years were classes, education, and then the last 4, yeah.
Okay. Do you recall the day your service ended?
Well, I was finished in '76, so the Vietnam War was over. Yeah. I was in Hawaii at that time, and so I just flew back to Treasure Island and San Francisco area, and just mustered out. You know, you had the physicals and stuff like that. You know, that took a couple of days, and then from there flew back home.
What did you do when you got home?
Boy, that's.
Did you go back to school, or did you go to work, or?
I went back to school right away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back to Mayville?
Yeah.
Okay. And what did you graduate from Mayville with?
BS in education.
So did you make any close friendships while you were in the service?
Well, they were momentarily. You know, a lot of the guys would transfer, or you know, they would get out, or you know, so good for the moment. There was nothing that I really carried over after I got out. couple of times, but I made some calls, but you know, your guys in Missouri or Massachusetts or California or wherever, so you just kind of move on.
Mm-hmm. Did you join a veterans organization after?
American Legion.
What did you do as a career after the war? You went back to school for education.
Yeah.
Did you teach?
Yeah, I taught. I was a high school librarian assistant in South Dakota for 6 months. I filled in for a gal. Mm-hmm. And then I came to Warren, and I was a high school librarian here for 2 years.
Okay.
3 years. Yeah.
Do you think your military experience influenced your thinking about war or the military in general?
Well, you know, when we got out in that time frame, people weren't very friendly. You know, you were kind of a lost veteran. So I just kind of let it go. You know, didn't really do much with that. So.
You're involved in the Legion. What kind of activities do you have there? I mean, what do you do together at the Legion?
Well, when I came to Warren, I was fairly active. Served in a number of positions, but then as we had our son and he got a little older, we kind of backed out of stuff, and I haven't really done too much. You know, I don't really do much with the Legion anymore.
Yeah. So, did your service and experiences in the service, did it affect your life and your outlook on life? Anything like that?
Well, yeah, it made you grow up, definitely. And when I came back, I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted an education, so I got it, you know. And I could have gone and went and worked in the nuclear field. I could have went to a nuclear power plant and worked, but I didn't really want anything to do with that. It wasn't the safest. I didn't feel the healthiest, maybe, because there was exposure to radiation. We had to carry these film badges, a little badge you carry on your belt, that if you get radiation, will penetrate that photo, and then they can measure what your level of radiation was. And the dosimeter, it's about that long, and they can check that every month. So.
Did it ever show up that you were getting radiation?
Well, yeah, because I had to do stuff in the reactor room, you know. So, yeah, you got a little radiation, yeah. It wasn't nothing serious. So.
Okay, so nothing that affected your health long term or anything like that?
Not that I'm aware of. I do have Parkinson's, so.
Okay.
But I don't know if they're looking at that or not as something that could bring that on.
Yeah. Do you have any other stories or experiences you'd like to share with me?
Well, I thought I'd show you these. These are called, these are our Dolphins. That's what you have to, you earn those by educating yourself on the boat. You have to qualify on the boat. You know, like I talked about, learn all the systems and everything. That's just qualifications. That's the certificate you get.
Okay. Oh, cool.
But that was a lot of work, and they only gave you a certain amount of time to do that.